So far, everything that I've covered on the channel has been UNSC vehicles. And I've seen a bunch of people ask, when are you going to do a Covenant one? Well, that day is today. Kind of. So if you've seen any of my other USS videos, you'll know that with most of my builds, I've already done a build a few years prior that I tried to improve upon. These were done when I had a lot less experience with MOC building, and I also had a lot less of a parts library to play with. So yeah, these builds aren't ideal, but they're still worth taking a look at, as you can learn a lot from looking at what doesn't work, what does work, and what kind of works but you think you can improve upon. So, the bad news is that I don't have any USS Covenant MOCs built yet, but until I do build them, I thought that you guys might appreciate a quick look over what I've done and where I might be able to improve. Sounds good? Alright, let's get into it. So, for the first video of this series, we're going to start with the Belox pattern Banshee. This isn't actually my favourite Banshee, that would go to the, you guessed it, Halo 3 Banshee. But in order to give this Banshee a go, I thought I would have to have a good canopy piece. At the time that I wanted to tackle the Banshee, all we had was this very old Banshee Canopy in the old purple, which I never really liked. The other option I had was the newer Banshee Canopy piece that came in the Sparrowhawk vs Banshee set. This one also has a nice iridescent green paint application, which is accurate to the Halo 3 Banshee. Unfortunately, this set was barely available in the UK, so I absolutely could not get my hands on it. So that left me with the only decent canopy piece being from the Orbital Banshee. This is a pretty nice piece. It's well shaped, appropriately scaled, but with one slight drawback. It was based around the Reach style or Belox pattern Banshee, and so that's why I settled on creating this MOC at this time. So this MOC does have a few features. As you'd expect, you can raise the canopy, showing a hollow interior where you can place a figure. There are a couple of control arms where you can attach the figure inside the cockpit. The wings on the side of the Banshee can pivot on their axis. It's a small feature, but you can see this whenever the Banshee does a loop in the game. And finally, the rear tail pieces of the Banshee can twist left and right. And that's about it. Short and sweet from this one. Looking at the design, straight off, I would say that I don't really think it's that bad of a first try. So the floor of the Banshee is made up of bricks that are aligned sideways, and then from there I built the sides of the Banshee up from that. This was done to keep the design as smooth as possible on both the inside and outside. It also helps to minimise the amount of tiles you need to use to smooth things off, as they're in short supply, especially in this colour. The hollow interior is a nice feature. Unfortunately, because the walls of the Banshee are so thin, it's a struggle to have exterior details without having some compromises on the interior. There's an awful lot of undersides of plates showing and really just a general lack of finish. Take the controls for example. I mean sure, they're present and they allow the figure to actually attach into the vehicle, but they're fixed with a very tenuous connection and they are prone to coming off with the figure. So a lot more work could definitely be done on the inside. Moving to the outside, I would say that I'm relatively happy with a lot of the detailing. The front profile of the fuselage especially looks pretty nice, and the way that the body follows the contours of the canopy piece does look convincing. The sides of the Banshee look alright, but I think in the future they could be done in a much more smooth way. At the time I didn't have a whole lot of pieces, so I just had to make the best use of what I had really. The wings of the Banshee are also made out of a snot method. This was done to give it a smooth look on both the top and the underside, even if it does come out looking a little blocky. The angle on the front is created by placing this pin into the section of the fuselage. On the rear, a simple single stud connection is created with an angle adapter. This was done to allow the posability of the wings, just like in-game, but it does come at a cost. It can definitely be fragile. The front wing section can just twist out after a few turns, and the rear wing section can literally just be knocked off. You can avoid this by picking up the model from certain places, and even if they are knocked off, they can relatively easily be placed back on the model. But yeah, it's far from sturdy. A similar thing can be said for the rest of the model. It's not insanely fragile, but it does have a tendency to fall apart every now and then. Basically, you can move it around just fine about 80% of the time. 15% of the time, some bits such as the wings or figure controls will fall off, and 5% of the time, you'll accidentally pull the wrong piece out and much of it will spontaneously deconstruct. So overall, not terrible, but not exactly great. I'm pretty happy with all the features that are included with it. There's no obvious features that I can think of that this model doesn't have that the in-game Banshee does. If anything, I might have to remove the swiveling wings if they just turn out to be too fragile. As for the rest of the model, the main two areas to focus on are structure and detail. I want to add a good amount of detail inside the cockpit, whilst smoothing out some more of the curves on the outside of the vehicle, and do that whilst adding a bit more stability and durability. It's kind of funny as the new Banshee has only recently been released and it does look a lot like this old MOC of mine. It is based on the Halo TV series, but still, the figures look quite nice, and I think that this might have to be the best Banshee that Mega has ever done. Saying this though, I'm honestly glad that I've managed to pick up a few of the older Banshee Canopy pieces. The new ones are fine, but that hole at the front does look a little bit unsightly. Even though it wasn't my first choice of Banshee to make, I definitely do want to return to this one someday. But as this was built years ago, Mega has since come out with the Arbiter's Quest set. Even though it does have a slightly different colour scheme, it does feature the fantastic new canopy mould. So expect to see a USS Halo 3 Banshee before you see an update on this specific design. Don't worry though, even though this isn't my favourite, it still has its charm and it's a really cool design in its own right. So yeah, I'll get to it one day, even if that day is not as soon as some people might want. Until then, you have this video. So there we are. This was a preview of the Belox pattern attack flyer, also known as the Banshee. Do you prefer this variant, or are you more of a fan of the Halo 3 version like I am? Which would you rather see built as a USS first? Leave me a comment down below. Who knows? You might change my mind. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm Reforger, and I'll see you next time.